In this video, we're learning how decision-making skills affect relationships. We want students to learn how shared decision-making can improve relationships and develop strategies to improve. Our first strategy is a simple one my wife and I came up with, and this is called the option list. So this is a modified win-win is what I would call it. And what would happen was, Friday night we wanted to rent a movie. So I'd ask her, well, what movie do you want to watch? She goes, oh, I don't care. So, I chose what I wanted to watch, which was typically, an action movie, something like that. And then it was, what movie or what restaurant do we want to go to? Oh, I don't care. So I would choose, and it was just, it's like, oh, I want Italian, so we're going Italian. And then after a while, she'd look back and she's like, well, we've been to Italian every single time we eat out, and every time we watch a movie, we watch an action movie. You clearly always get what you want. And I would look at her. I said, well, you always tell me you don't care. And so this was the start of an argument. And so we found the work around that is, when it comes to choosing something, a restaurant, a movie, or really anything, I'll give a couple of options. Well, I'm okay with Mexican, Italian, or American dining. And then she would say, okay, this is out of those three, this is what I want. We both get what we want. It's not a true win-win. It's not 100% consensus, but it's a system that worked for us. Same with choosing a movie. All right, here's an action, here's a romantic comedy, and here's an old classic that I like. And then out of those three, she chooses one she wants. This time I put together the list, next time she puts together the list. So just one of those unofficial things that work for me and my wife. All right, getting a little bit deeper here. When working with a team, and whether that's a team of two people, a husband and wife, a brother and sister, whatever it might be, or a bigger group, this is what we need to do. We need to make sure people realize their strengths and weaknesses and work from there. Doing so will allow you and your partner to make decisions efficiently, or I should say effectively, with less strain on the relationship. Think about how a business works. You take the person that understands the finances the most, you make them CFO. You make the people that's great at paperwork and taking care of the details, you put them in human resources. We always play people to their strengths. The caring, compassionate, great listeners become the psychologists. We should be doing the same here in partners, in that, whether it's a partner or team, but it's any relationship, where that we work to each other's strengths. Here's an example. My wife is a nurse and I'm a teacher. So we'll discuss the healthcare, but ultimately I'm looking at her for her guidance when it comes to, do we need to take our child into the hospital or to the doctor? Or do we need to sit this one out and let the kid rest? And then when it comes to choosing a school, choosing a daycare, we'll discuss and we'll play through everything, but she very heavily relies on my experience and my knowledge base to make sure we make the best decisions. And the same when it comes to other aspects of her life, where look at the strengths. And the same goes with interests. There's chores that need to be done, laundry, dishes, cooking, and so on. It's a lot better if we take on the chores that we prefer. I like mowing, I like being outside, and so that's something I might take over. So that's a great way, is to really look at the strengths and the interest. When communicating, when discussing, and we need to make sure that each person says, what they're wanting, and and then the two together can say what's important to them, what are they trying to accomplish here. Communicate, as it says, open and honestly, but to really say how you're feeling, and not just what you think the other person wants to hear. Ideally, you come up with a consensus. I gave my example of the option list earlier. The perfect scenario is people truly agree together on something. Let's be creative, and let's use appropriate conflict resolution. And I have more on that later. All right, so when it comes to making agreements, there are certain things that the more you agree on, the better things are going to work. I've got a relative of mine. The two were truly best friends, and they got married, and they stayed best friends. until one time, till a couple years after the marriage, the wife was wanting to have a child and the father was not, and this ended their marriage. They ended up getting divorced, and when we look back on it and we're talking to them, we're like, how did that possibly never come up? And it's like, they really didn't talk about it, and she always thought he was going to change his opinion, but ultimately that's something they should have agreed on before getting married. Okay, more on that is they need to agree on the practical living. For example, who's going to wash the dishes, who's going to clean the house, who's going to pay the bills, who's going to mow the lawn. If people can agree on that, it's going to solve the problem. I call these roommate issues, and that's something when you first get a roommate, there's always going to be those issues. And husband and wife, brother sister, that's going to always be a problem. And that's why a lot of times that first year of marriage can be real tough, because that's all not worked out yet. And there's a lot of strategies for those. One thing that worked on us is if somebody, especially like when we first got married, the other person was doing something that bothered us. My wife used to leave her shoes in walkways, and I used to leave dishes in the sink. And instead of verbalizing it, we would write it on a dry erase board that was on the refrigerator. And when the other person erased it, that was their way of saying, I'm willing to work on this now. I'm willing to commit to this. Agreements in communication and rational health, such as being open, addressing conflict, supporting one another, and with sexual expectations. People who are raised in open and touchy families may need to listen well to understand that others are raised guarded and distant. And so, as we all know, some people talk about their feelings openly and in depth, and some people are more guarded. And that's something that the other person needs to empathize and understand, and both people need to work to change. And it's not that one person just says, well, this is just how I was raised, we don't talk about things. Well, they can learn, but it can be expected that it's a slow, steady growth. Agreement in money. So many families end in divorce because of money. So there needs to be a budget, and both people need to agree on the budget and stick with the budget. They need to decide how much to save, how much to invest, and have similar values. This is, so if one person wants that very expensive car and the other person wants to save for, a boat in 20 years, that's going to be a big problem. We need it so both people are agreeing, and the budget line is fair, and most importantly agreed on. It's going to always cause problems if one person overspends the other, or they don't agree on the spending, and it's going to cause problems. If one person is making a lot more than the other, and they think that they get to choose everything, that's not going to go well in the relationship. They need to agree with the involvement with the extended family and friends, visiting in-laws, going out, recreation, and how to handle difficult people. We need the couple needs to decide how social to be. If one person wants to have friends over every day, the other one wants to have friends over once a month. That's going to cause an issue. Some people want more personal space than others. So, like, take the group that wants to go to the gym together, the couple that wants to go to the gym together. One person might feel smothered by, okay, we talk all night, and now you want to go to the gym with me. The gym's my alone time. So these kind of things, they need to be established. Spiritual commitments, praying together, attending church, and ministering to others. These are all examples that need to be worked out and agreed on. And agreements on the future, so that where do you see yourself? One person wants to live in the city, the other one in the country. One person wants to focus very much on the career, and the other person wants them home more with the family. One person wants to spend their time and money vacationing, the other one doesn't. These are all things that can lead to problems and need to be discussed. All right, so we've given a lot of things to talk about here, and this is in our relationship series, but I think through this you'll be able to better help others and help yourself in your own relationships.